everybody, Jonathan here from AJ&Smart. I'm currently in my hotel room, which is kind of weird because I'm filming with my unmade bed in the background. It feels a bit intimate. I'm here in Japan, Tokyo, check it out, oh my god. And I'm here to run a workshop for a pretty cool company, which I unfortunately can't talk about right now. And I thought I'd make a little video while I'm here to touch on a subject that comes up a lot in AJ&Smart material you see around the internet, and that's the topic of design thinking. So I've written a lot about design thinking, we've spoken a lot about design thinking, and a lot of it, I guess it comes across as negative. It comes across as we at AJ&Smart really don't believe in it. And yeah, also I know that in a lot of talks I do and on the podcast, yeah, I all over design thinking a lot. So maybe I should clarify that a little bit. First of all, I'm not gonna go back on anything I said. I still 100% believe the things I think about it. So I'm just gonna kind of clarify it all here. First of all, design thinking has influenced a lot of the things we do at AJ&Smart. Design thinking is a huge influence on the design sprint itself. So without design thinking, without IDEO, I think the entire industry would be a lot of steps back. You know, I think it's been a huge influence on, you know, product design, on all forms of design, and I think it is a fantastic philosophy. That's the thing though. Design thinking for me, it's a philosophy. It isn't a process that you just plug into and use immediately, and that's unfortunately how it's being sold to companies. So an agency will go to a company, or an innovation house will go to a company, and they'll say, hey, you want to innovate, we're going to teach you how to do design thinking, and then you're going to be able to innovate. The problem with that is that what happens, and I see this happening all the time because I go and visit these companies and I go to try to help them out of their issues. The problem is that once they do their design thinking initiatives, they do their workshops, they have their post-its, hello post-its, and a couple of months later, maybe a lot of millions of dollars later, now they're left alone to kind of make products using the design thinking knowledge that they learned, and they're kind of stuck. They're like, oh, okay, so let's make the personas. So they spend time making the personas, and then they're like, okay, how does that translate into features, and how does that translate into what we actually want to build as a product? And I think that the philosophies in design thinking are fantastic, but they don't translate practically to building a product, especially if you're talking about building digital products, or, you know, digitizing a company, or going digital, as they say. I think that design thinking is a fantastic thing if it's thought as a philosophy, as a mindset, but when it is thought as a system, I generally don't see it working. It's too broad, it's too vague, it's too fluffy, and I often think that design thinking undermines what design actually is when it is thought in the way that it is, like this is a system, because I think that companies see that it's not working, and then companies have less faith in design overall, which sucks, right? And by the time we're called in, the engineers and the business owners and the product managers are already down on design thinking, and therefore they kind of extend that to everything else that they want to do. They're like, yeah, design is just kind of fluffy bullshit, and we're just doing it because we have to. So what do I think? Where do I think the place for design thinking is? I think design thinking is something to be thought as a mindset, and then there needs to be systems in place for actually doing the specific work that needs to be done. So for example, if you are looking at something like validating a product or coming up with new features, I think then the sprint, that's where the design sprint comes in. The design sprint is nice because it is a step-by-step recipe, right? It takes the philosophies from design thinking, but then it turns those into a recipe. It's not like, you know, loads of tools everywhere like personas and all this kind of stuff that you have to figure out. You don't have to figure anything out, you just plug into this recipe. So I think that, and there are other recipes for other parts of the product process that design thinking kind of acts as a top level philosophy for, but then there are systems underneath. So I think that design thinking is fantastic. Design thinking, I really am a huge respecter of IDEO. I'm a respecter of IDEO. I had the opportunity to meet Tim Brown recently at the IDEO offices in San Francisco. Huge fanboy, absolutely absolute major IDEO fanboy here. But at the same time, I'm not just going to go around and tell companies that they should spend tons of money on implementing a design thinking system into their company and then think that they're going to get innovation. Just not true. It's just not true, and it's some bullshit being spread around by companies who want to sell, obviously, design thinking programs. By the way, we used to sell design thinking programs at AJ&Smart, and it's not like we were trying to do it to get, it's not like we thought we were, tricking people. It's just that we didn't know any better and we thought it would work. But then over the years, we noticed that every time we would come back to these companies, they would have their personas up on the wall. They would maybe just have everything on the Dropbox that they learned. The new employees, the old employees who learned about design thinking didn't give a about it, so they didn't pass it on. So it just kind of died after a while. And I've seen even the biggest companies teaching design thinking, even if they embed themselves within companies and stay there for over a year or 2 years, it still doesn't work. I really haven't seen great examples of design thinking working if it's purely being used as the system for innovation. There's a lot more to do. It's not a magic pill, and I think it shouldn't be sold like that. So I guess that's why I kind of all over design thinking. It's being sold as a practical set of tools for innovation, but it is not a practical set of tools for innovation. Design thinking is a mindset and a philosophy and a toolbox as well. I think the analogy I used in a previous video was design thinking is like going to a cooking theory course. You learn, how these things, how cheese and pasta work together. You learn maybe specifically how to cut onions, but once you get out and you're working in a team, you're kind of like, okay, now how do we actually make the spaghetti bolognese? How would you make it? That's the design sprint. As an example, the design sprint is then a simple recipe. By the way, the design sprint itself just happens to be a practical system that we use. Doesn't mean that it's the only system. I've seen companies using other systems that work very well as well. So also not to tell you that it's not design thinking, it's the design sprint. It's not one or the other. I think it's good also to know the philosophies behind it. But yeah, okay, I think that's enough. Hello from Japan, and hope you enjoyed this video. So if you like this video, give it a like. I'd love to know what your opinions on design thinking are in the comments, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.